You pray for peace in the morning, then by noon, you say, "I can't take this anymore." Nothing ever changes. "This always happens to me. I knew it would go wrong." And then you wonder why your prayer feels powerless. This is one of the most common spiritual mistakes people make. They think prayer is a separate event, a sacred moment, a private ritual, a few sincere words directed toward heaven. But Jesus never treated words that way. He treated words as force, as instruction, as alignment, as law. And if that is true, then most people are not failing because God did not hear them. They are failing because they keep using their own mouth to rebuild the very reality they ask God to remove. That is the hidden tragedy. They pray in one direction, then they speak in another. They ask for healing, then rehearse fear. They ask for provision, then confess lack all day. They ask for restoration, then narrate defeat with every conversation. And because they do not understand the physics of speech, they keep canceling their own prayer through repetition. Most people do not lose in prayer, they lose in repetition. That sentence may sound harsh, but it explains why so many sincere believers remain trapped in the same cycles for years. Not because they do not pray, but because they do not understand that prayer is not only what you say in one intense moment. Prayer is also what your mouth continues agreeing with when the emotion fades. If your words carry fear more consistently than your faith, then fear becomes the stronger pattern, and reality organizes around the dominant pattern. This is why Jesus spoke about words with such unnerving precision. He did not speak as if words were harmless. He spoke as if words were structurally consequential. In the Gospel of Matthew, he says, "By thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." That is an astonishing statement. He does not say, "By your intentions, by your hidden desires, by what you wish you believed." He says, "By your words." Why? Because words are not just sounds leaving the mouth. Words reveal agreement. Words expose what the heart has stabilized. Words train perception, they shape expectation, they reinforce emotional states, they teach the nervous system what to keep preparing for. And once a pattern is spoken often enough, it begins to feel true simply because it has become familiar. That is where the danger begins. Because most people think they are merely describing their reality. But most of the time, they are reinforcing it. They say, "I'm always behind. I never catch a break. Nothing works for me. I'm just a worrier. I always get hurt." And because those sentences are repeated with emotional charge, the nervous system starts building around them. Neuroscience and audiology help explain exactly why this happens. To understand why your words carry so much power over your body, you have to look at the biology of human hearing. When someone else speaks to you, the sound travels through the air. But when you speak, something entirely different happens. The sound of your own voice travels directly through the bones of your skull and jaw. In science, this is called bone conduction. It means the acoustic vibration of your own voice resonates through your skeletal structure, vibrating your inner ear and your nervous system from the inside out. Mechanically speaking, your own voice is the loudest, most physically impactful sound your brain ever receives. Your system is designed to trust the sound of your own voice above all other inputs. So when you repeatedly speak the same fear, you are creating an acoustic feedback loop. You are physically vibrating your own nervous system with the frequency of panic. The brain is not a passive recorder. It is a predictive engine. It uses this acoustic repetition to determine what should be treated as normal. And language plays a major role in that process. When you repeatedly speak the same fear, the same defeat, the same expectation of loss, you are not just venting. You are giving the brain instructions. You are feeding the prediction system. You are strengthening the pathways that make the same pattern easier to perceive, easier to expect, and easier to reproduce. The more often you say, "This always happens," the more your brain starts scanning reality for evidence that it does. The more often you say, "I'm not safe," the more your nervous system prepares for danger before danger is even present. The more often you say, "I'll probably fail," the more your body enters the task already organized around collapse. This is not superstition. This is repetition shaping internal reality, and internal reality is never fully private. It affects posture, breathing, tone, eye contact, decision-making, risk perception, emotional regulation. It changes how you move through the world, and eventually, it changes what the world keeps reflecting back. Now go back to Jesus. He says, "Whoever says to this mountain, 'Be removed and cast into the sea,' and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him." Again, look carefully. Jesus does not just emphasize belief. He emphasizes speech. Whoever says. Why? Because words are where inner agreement becomes externalized. Words are where faith either holds its form or fractures. A person may feel inspired in prayer for 10 minutes, but what happens when pressure comes? What comes out of the mouth then? That is often the real theology of the nervous system. That is the real state. That is the real agreement. Because under pressure, people stop performing belief and start revealing pattern. And Jesus knew this. That is why he connects speech with heart, not just mouth. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. In other words, your words do not come from nowhere. They emerge from what has been stored, what has been repeated, what has been stabilized, what has been allowed to remain. So if your speech is constantly carrying fear, bitterness, scarcity, and anticipation of defeat, the issue is not merely bad language habits. The issue is that fear has become abundant in the heart, and abundance always spills. This is why some prayers seem powerful in the morning but weak by evening. Not because heaven changed, but because the person spent the entire day speaking against what they prayed. They planted one seed in prayer, then spent 12 hours digging it up with their mouth. They asked for peace, then kept saying, "I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. I know this is going to end badly." They asked for provision, then kept declaring, "I'll never get ahead. There's never enough. Everything is getting worse." They asked for healing, then kept naming themselves by the problem, my anxiety, my condition, my weakness, my curse. Listen carefully. There is a difference between acknowledging a condition and establishing agreement with it. Jesus never taught denial, but he also never taught people to enthrone the problem with their speech. He did not stand before storms and describe them endlessly. He addressed them. He did not hold long conversations with mountains about how large they were. He spoke to them. This is where the modern believer often gets trapped. They are sincere, they are emotional, they want breakthrough, but they are more fluent in describing bondage than in speaking from alignment. They have mastered the language of the prison, and then they wonder why the walls remain strong. Let's go deeper. Why do negative words have so much power? Because language is not neutral to the body. Self-directed speech alters physiology. Words change breathing patterns. They change muscular tension. They change emotional tone. They change heart rhythm and internal expectation. If you say, "I'm doomed," your body does not respond the same way it responds to, "I will get through this." If you say, "This always destroys me," your system begins preparing for defeat. If you say, "God is with me in this," the body has a different reference point. The phrase itself does not act like magic, but the phrase reflects and reinforces a state. And the repeated state becomes the environment in which your biology keeps living. This is why careless speech is not small. It is environmental design. Most people are building an atmosphere with their own mouth and then blaming the world for how heavy it feels. They do not realize they are acoustically discipling themselves into fear. This is also why double-mindedness is so dangerous. A double-minded person does not simply have two opinions. A double-minded person issues contradictory instructions. One moment, I trust God. The next, this is hopeless. One moment, I believe healing is possible. The next, I'll probably always be this way. One moment, my life is changing. The next, nothing ever changes. That is not merely emotional inconsistency. That is competing pattern installation. And no system can organize cleanly around contradiction. This is why James says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Unstable, not just morally weak, structurally unstable, because the inner signal keeps splitting, and split signals cannot carry clean authority. So what does it mean, practically, to stop canceling your prayer? First, it means you become aware of your post-prayer speech. What do you start saying after you say, Amen? That matters. Maybe more than you think. Second, it means you stop glorifying fear with eloquence. Some people have become so articulate about their suffering that they mistake precision for truth. They can explain the problem beautifully, describe the pain in detail, narrate the cycle with emotional intelligence, but they are still feeding it. There comes a point where description stops being honesty and becomes reinforcement. Third, it means you train your mouth to remain aligned under pressure. Not fake, not theatrical, aligned. That does not mean you never acknowledge pain. It means pain does not become your prophet. It means the problem does not get the final word. It means you stop speaking as if the visible moment is the highest authority. This is exactly how Jesus operated. He did not deny visible conditions. He simply refused to speak as though visible conditions were ultimate. He saw the storm, but he spoke peace. He saw the fig tree, but he spoke consequence. He saw the tomb, but he spoke life. Again and again, the same pattern appears. Jesus does not echo the scene. He addresses it from a deeper order. That is authority. And this is where the episode becomes personal. What are your words training you to expect? What atmosphere are you building with your mouth? When you speak about your body, your future, your finances, your relationships, your calling, do your words carry agreement with fear or agreement with God? Because your words are never only reporting, they are reinforcing. They are either helping your prayer take root or helping the old pattern survive. Most people are waiting for God to change their environment while refusing to change the sound coming out of their own mouth. But sound matters. Speech matters. Agreement matters. The first creation story begins with God speaking. The Gospel of John begins with the Word. Reality in Scripture is not introduced through silence. It is introduced through utterance. That should tell you something. Words are not decoration. Words are carriers. They carry meaning, direction, expectation, identity, alignment, and when repeated long enough, they carry structure. So if you want to know why some realities remain stubbornly unchanged, ask yourself a harder question. What have I been repeatedly saying that keeps teaching my system to remain here? Not just what have I prayed. What have I spoken after the prayer? What have I normalized in my language? What have I named as permanent that God never called final? Because in the end, the issue is not whether you prayed once with passion. The deeper issue is whether your speech keeps building the same reality after the prayer is over. Most people do not lose in prayer, they lose in repetition. So do not just pray for peace. Stop speaking chaos. Do not just ask for healing. Stop making a covenant with the wound. Do not just ask for a new life. Stop using your mouth to defend the old one, because the words that follow your prayer often reveal which reality you have truly agreed with. And if you learn to align your speech with the deeper order of faith, the old life will begin losing one more way of rebuilding itself. Welcome back to the mechanics of faith